Blessings, good evening. It's a Tuesday night, so means we have some questions have come in. Dear Luang Por, I lived in a noisy environment for over 40 years, and my accommodation to reduce intermittent yet often and stressful conditions of angry-sounding, noisy humans, sirens and traffic was to turn on a fan and use it as a tool to subdue the anxiety I felt from the arguments through the thin walls and nearby streets. It was mostly at night and sleep time that this outside noise would occur. I now live in a much more quiet environment for 3 years, but still have the remnants of the previous fears and anticipation of agitated sounds I had experienced for those many years. I also can put headphones on and listen to Dhamma talks rather than the fan, and both of these methods usually help me relax enough and get restful and prepared for sleeping. My question relates to anticipation of noise and that former anxiety I'd feel, and the fact that the noises no longer exist. I can't seem to let go and relax without these tools and still must use them nightly to relax. Sometimes, however, I still get agitated thinking some horrible noise will arise. I carry a fan when traveling as well. I've obviously created a long-standing habit that seems unchangeable. I recently started to become annoyed at this continued need for these items in my sleep schedule, and I'm hoping you have some advice on both that internal annoyance of need, perhaps clinging, and also to offer suggestions to help ask myself the right questions so I can reduce and eventually let go of this habitual pattern I created 45 years ago as a protection from harmful sounds. Quite a long, involved question, but the Buddhists always have a nice, simple answer. We say, karma. Karma is like this. So you live in a noisy, maybe even slightly disturbing, threatening neighborhood, makes sleep difficult, makes you anxious being in your place, your home at night. I think many people have experienced that, but hopefully most people, maybe just occasionally, but sounds like you've had it tough. So I guess you could say it's almost like a kind of PTSD, isn't it? Memories and anxiety triggered on by memories of past events. And sounds like you were quite clever and worked out some ways to deal with it, and now you've understood that listening to Dhamma and perhaps using a fan can help. In terms of Dhamma teaching, I would recommend developing a lot of mindfulness. The quality of mindfulness, partly and probably mainly by meditation, such as using the breath as a meditation object, but could be recollecting the Buddha, cultivating the thought of loving kindness or compassion, or mindfulness directed to the body, one aspect of the body. Cultivate a lot of mindfulness over and over again, every day, partly through formal meditation, like sitting and walking meditation, partly through just general mindfulness in daily life, practiced together with this quality, sampajanya, clear comprehension, whether you're working, relaxing, traveling, shopping, whatever. Cultivating this ability to pay attention, be present. And as you become more mindful through practice, you'll notice the memories popping up that trigger some of these responses, the anxiety, the anticipation. You become sharper, and you can catch it very quickly maybe as the anticipation is arising or the anxiety is coming up. Maybe you'll notice what brings it on, or notice the feeling that comes with it as it's coming up. Maybe you have tension, maybe you have different physical and mental activities going on that you notice are associated with this anxiety, and so you can start to become much more mindful of how it comes up, how it is, and maybe work out a method that you can recognize it and then go to your meditation object or a skillful reflection that will help you at that time, every time it comes up. So it could be developing a metta meditation directed to yourself, perhaps. For example, developing awareness of a warm, loving feeling in your heart that you go to when this anxiety is coming up. So maybe before you go to sleep at night or during the night. Or you could also use the breath if you find that helpful and calming and a conducive meditation object. Just use the breath at these moments when the anxiety is coming up, and you go to the breath rather than holding on or clinging to the anxiety or letting it trigger habitual reactions in the mind. So you use the breath to both become mindful but also to calm you down physically and mentally. And then some wise reflection. The obvious one is, well, to reflect, this is karma, this is a built-up response pattern and habit. You know what it is, you've explained it well in your questions, you already understand what it is, what's going on. And you have to keep reminding yourself of that and wisely reflect, well, this is something you've been through, it happened, but it's hopefully not happening very much now. There's no threat, there's no problem, and hopefully very little disturbing sound. That's one reflection in itself. Reflect on the fact I'm free of that previous unfortunate set of conditions that was putting pressure on me when I slept at night. Now I'm free. Rejoice, be happy for that. Your nice peaceful bed in your peaceful neighborhood. Rejoice, appreciate that every day. That may help. But when you have the memories and the anxiety triggered, we'll just, again, come back to the present moment. Say, well, that's just a memory. And memories arise and cease, you can let it go. The feelings that come with that memory, or triggered by the memory, arise and pass away. They're not permanent. What's impermanent is not a self, a lasting solid self. It's just one experience of the mind that arises, passes away. So investigate it, question it, observe, reflect on it, and this will help you get a good perspective on it and relax more and more and let go of the anxiety, rather than feeding it or just following old habit patterns. So this will take time and effort, but you can do it. And many people have dealt with all kinds of unpleasant memories that trigger unpleasant emotional reactions and feelings. And this is one of the benefits of meditation. But at the same time, you're also using the Buddhist teachings, like reflecting on impermanence, reflecting on how this sense of self forms when you're not particularly mindful. You sort of grasp at the feeling, the emotion, the thought patterns, and that's me, that's who I am, and sort of make it stronger, make it seem to last longer. reflect, this is actually not self, this is not permanent, and you start to analyze and pull it apart a bit, and then maybe it can dissolve, and sometimes you might see it or observe it dissolve right in front of your eyes, as it were, during your reflection or when you establish mindfulness. You can see, this is nothing, this is a memory, this is a feeling, this is just a feeling of anxiety. This is a certain way of thinking, and you watch that dissolve mindfully from start to finish. If you do that a few times, or sometimes even just once, but certainly a few times, it may never come back quite so strong as before. And if you're developing mindfulness directed to the breath or to the loving kindness or some object like that, gradually you don't need your fan or your various tools, your headphones necessarily. Obviously you have to be patient with the feelings of pain, stress, anxiety, but if you're practicing continuously, regularly, you can maybe do away with the equipment that you've relied on for so long. And you may find also that you learn what works for you to calm your mind. So some people just think of something very that brings them a sense of peace, security, very positive emotions. So it could be some form of loving kindness or compassion. It could be something that inspires that. So you could think of the Buddha. And the Buddha always said, if you're feeling afraid or anxious, think of the Buddha. If all else fails, recite the Buddha's name, think of the Buddha, paint a beautiful Buddha figure in your mind, or any aspect, the life of the Buddha, the qualities of the Buddha. And if you learn any chanting, you can also recite chanting. And that calms you, and it's okay to fall asleep while reciting chanting if you're lying in bed. But that's what you want, isn't it? You want to be able to fall asleep through the anxiety. But chanting will bring your mind to focus on something positive, wholesome, like the Buddha or some teaching of the Buddha. But it doesn't have to be the Buddha, it could be something else that just brings you a feeling of peace, security, and you keep working with that as a kind of meditation at the times when you feel anxious. So I'm sure meditation will help, and just general wise reflection will help you to get through this. And it sounds like you've also made wise, skillful lifestyle changes and choices and changes, so that you're living in a quiet neighborhood now. That's a good move. Go on a meditation retreat when you can. Maybe you'll go deeper into your meditation, and that will also give you some insight that you can take back to your home with you, and then use that on an ongoing basis. As far as annoyance goes, well, annoyance is overcome with patience, again mindfulness, patience, and then kindness and compassion. So, if you're annoyed with yourself, well, accept that and be tolerant of yourself, but also see that holding on to negative states of mind, negative trains of thought, turning against yourself doesn't help, it only makes you feel worse. So try to catch that again with mindfulness and teach yourself to let go of those negative thoughts. Be more tolerant of yourself. Sometimes you have to just teach yourself when you're getting annoyed, these annoying thoughts, you understand where they're coming from, the feelings that come with them, but they're not helpful, and they're only prolonging the agony, prolonging the suffering you're experiencing, so let them go. And focus your mind back on something more powerful, more positive, like compassion, kindness, and just work until you can bring it up. So there's a few reflections. Next question. Lumpur, what is contemplation or wise reflection in Buddhist meditation? Well, something similar to what I was describing just then. There's many kinds of wise reflection and contemplation. Sometimes people ask, what does Buddhism teach? Well, Buddhism teaches us the way to be free from suffering. That means giving us the knowledge, the wisdom, or the insight that will free us from suffering. Where does knowledge and insight come from? Well, from contemplation, wise reflection. And there's many kinds, or many levels of wise reflection, contemplation. In the beginning, we just think about things. We can all think. Every day you're making choices and thinking about your life. You get up, what am I going to wear today? What am I going to eat today? Is this a work day? When I'm going to work, what do I have to do? We are constantly thinking and reflecting on things, pondering things, some problems, some needs, things we have to do. We have a mind that can do this. That's part of our humanity. But in terms of Buddhism, you're now training that ability or function of mind to help you free yourself, truly free yourself from suffering. So to understand where suffering comes from, what's its cause, how can you end suffering, what will end it, what tools, what reflections will end it, and so on. You're using the thinking process and the ability to reflect or wisely reflect on things for an end. And that is to understand the truth so you can be free, liberate your mind from suffering. So you've already got what you need, because human beings, we can think, we can reason, we can look at and observe things. But we need to train it, practice with it more. So listening to Dhamma is usually the beginning point. Is that you hear Dhamma, or you read Dhamma, or you talk, discuss the Dhamma, which gives you some ideas. You hear how other people reflect and contemplate, how the Buddha does it, what the Buddha taught, what the Buddha said is important, what's not so important, what will help you in certain situations, dealing with certain problems. By studying, learning, listening, discussing, you get a store of information that you can now apply in your practice. And you have to go away and think for yourself, contemplate, ask questions of yourself, reflect back on your own experience, but using some of the framework and the knowledge that you've gained from the teachers, the Buddha and maybe living teachers and the books. Now you apply it to yourself. So you internalize this information you've heard and acquired, and you start comparing and thinking about your own experience, direct experience. What is suffering? What's it like to suffer? I mean, everyone can say, I know what it's like to suffer, but as an experience, what is it? What's going on? There's a feeling, there's a train of thought, there's a few different things happening. You see something, you hear something, you remember something, and maybe feeling's a big part of suffering, isn't it? It comes up, some painful feeling, anxiety, like the last question, comes with a feeling. You get trains of thought. Quite often we're feeding it or making it worse. If we're more mindful, maybe we can stop doing that or change the way we think and the way we identify with thoughts and feelings. So we need to practice mindfulness, which is part of what we are told, but then we need to practice it, and that is where you need to put effort into your practice. When there's more mindfulness, we pay attention, we can observe, we can know better what's going on in our experience. So mindfulness is the forerunner of wisdom, insight. You'll notice when you are mindful, you can observe, you pay attention for longer, the more mindful you are. your mind is clearer, less distracted, then you can maybe contemplate or really look at something and ask questions, analyze, think about, but in a way that is quite concentrated and continuous. You can really get to know, say, suffering, how it arises, and then apply maybe some remedies and reflections that will help change what you're doing, what's going on in your mind. Just now, this evening, we chanted the 10 reflections of a samana. They're all 10, that's 10 different wise reflections that you can employ, or you should employ, and it's not just for monks, it's for everyone, in your daily life. So things like, does regret over my conduct arise in my mind? Maybe once a day in the evening reflect, what did I say and do today? Did I do something I'm not very proud of, or I regret, or could have done better? That's a simple action of wise reflection maybe on your virtue, your morality, your actions and speech through the day. Getting to know better what is conducive to peace, mindfulness, wholesome qualities arising, what is not. When you get angry, what's going on? When I'm angry, am I becoming more virtuous, more peaceful, wiser? Probably not. When you're angry, you become agitated, unhappy, regretful, feel bad about yourself, other people don't like it, disaster, destruction, and so on. That, if you reflect on that, then you start to know, I want to stop this anger from ruining my day or ruining my life, so I'm going to be more mindful of it, look at ways to avoid becoming angry, or if I do get angry, look at ways to reflect to help me let go of anger quickly and to protect myself from something like anger. That's wise reflection, contemplation. And in the beginning it's a lot of thinking and looking and learning. But if you keep practicing, you get to know these, what we call these mental defilements more. Greed, anger, delusion, fear, jealousy, stubbornness, laziness, etc. There's different kinds of what we call mental defilements. Get to know them, how they arise, what will remedy them, what you need to do. And as you become more mindful, you don't have to think about it so much, you just know, anger, let it go, it's painful, it's suffering, let it go. Some lessons you learn until the point where you hardly need to contemplate or reflect much at all. On the level of virtuous behavior or not virtuous behavior, these reflections become quite clear. And as your practice develops, maybe more subtle craving and attachment defilements you become aware of them, things you didn't notice before, but as you meditate more, become more mindful, more reflective, maybe you notice very subtle defilements, not sort of brazen greed or anger, but just subtle sense of self arising in your thinking, subtle things you identify with, comparing with other people, ideas, views that we attach to. And you notice more subtle attachments, but you carry on reflecting, and now your reflection may be just observing, catching yourself, asking yourself questions again, but more subtle views, beliefs, rather than just on your outward behavior, which you reflect on, on the level of sila. Now you're reflecting just on internal things, or you're reflecting on the roots of lust or the roots of anger, like the sense of self, how it attaches to feelings that arise based in the body, physical feelings of pleasure, pain. That requires some contemplation, some observation with mindfulness, and then thinking, this leads to that. I grasp this feeling. Without mindfulness, I like it or I don't like it, I react, I think over and over again, then I want it more or I want to get rid of it more because I don't like it. And that becomes a habit, and so you notice how you form habits over time. Pleasure-seeking, pain-hating, running towards things, trying to get things, trying to get rid of things. But because you practice mindfulness and you're contemplating, maybe you notice this going on and you can change your inner mental behavior. You're already changing your outer behavior, the way you speak, the way you talk maybe, and the way you act. Now you're changing your inner mental behavior, dropping attachments as you see them coming up, dropping the process that feeds attachment, changing that or reducing that, so that you can be more free, so that you see something pleasurable, but you don't necessarily have to keep thinking about it or get addicted to it or follow the desires. You go, oh, that's pleasurable, and you can maintain more equanimity, more peace. Or something unpleasant happens to you, but you can reflect, that's unpleasant, I know that, but I'm not going to give in to my angry thoughts, I'm not going to hold on or react to that unpleasant feeling of tension, I just know it and let it go. So as you practice more, maybe your contemplation becomes more subtle, maybe also more quicker, more like just knowing, oh, this is like this, finish. Whereas in the beginning we're often trying to work it all out, and sometimes our contemplation, because we're not very mindful yet and not very experienced, we say the more you contemplate, the more confused you get. And you're trying to learn all the Dhamma and remember all the Dhamma and one thing and that thing and this thing, and it ends up in a big tangle. That's why we also have to practice a lot of what we call samatha meditation, where you just calm the mind down, or stop thinking or stop holding on to the thoughts, and let them go. Not stop trying to work everything out and solve every problem. Sometimes we need to do that. We just come back to the present moment with a simple meditation object to re-establish awareness, mindfulness in the present moment. And you'll notice sometimes when you become more skilled in contemplation, you don't really need to prompt it or deliberately do very much. If you're more practiced, you've done the practice more, just establishing calm, peace, out of that you see and know things without having to really think it or deliberately kind of, I am going to contemplate this or do that. In the beginning you might do it in a more deliberate way, but as you become more mindful and sensitive, you just know something. Defilement, attachment, craving, suffering, let go. Things happen very quickly and easily, maybe, the more you practice. You see something pleasurable, then you go, oh, but it doesn't last very long. But it also has some pain associated with it as well. You see things from different sides because you're now, as you become more still, more calm, and more used to contemplating, your wisdom faculty is sharper. So you may see one side of things, but you also see the other. The good side, the bad side, the beautiful side, the unattractive side. Whereas before you were just stuck in your old ways, now you maybe are more free to look and contemplate, and very quickly you understand the way things are, so you can let go better. So they say that the Arahant has mastered their mind. If they want to think about something in one way, they can. If they want to think about it in another way, they can. They can see the good in the bad in the good, the attractive in the unattractive, the unattractive in the attractive. They're able to kind of detach their mind and look at things from different angles and direct the mind to see and know what's useful. Whereas the ordinary person is sort of, without realizing half the time, we just prey to our emotions. So we follow the things we like, we reject the things we don't like, and suffer and stressed by them. And it's just going on habitually. Whereas the Arahant has enough mindfulness and wisdom to kind of pick things up, look, put them down again, without getting attached, without getting stressed by it. And they have that peace, there's that sort of detached awareness where they're still experiencing the world, but they can just contemplate from this place of stillness and quietness. It's like this, it's like that. There's no strong emotion affecting them and pulling the mind all over the place, because they have a mindfulness and wisdom is well trained. So that's just a few thoughts on contemplation. There's much more could be said about it, but maybe I'll just say that much today. The last question is, how do you deal with your emotions after hearing about other people's suffering? Well, whatever stimulates attachments, craving, negative emotions, and strong attachment to emotions that leads on to some kind of suffering or agitation, that's to be investigated, and so that's a place to practice. Hearing other people's suffering, hearing about their suffering is one way emotions are stimulated, and there's many other ways as well. So we're constantly coming back to developing the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, sila, right speech, right action, right effort, and the effort to abandon unwholesome states of mind and cultivate and bring up wholesome states of mind, mindfulness, samadhi, stillness, calm. So that, in general, that's what we're developing. And so if you're hearing other people's suffering, well, the way the Buddha encouraged us to practice kindness and compassion is to always remember we are one person in the situation. There's them and there's us. And to try and develop kindness and compassion equally. So, sure, we listen to others, friends, families, or sometimes strangers. And with kindness, compassion, maybe just as a friend or as a support, sometimes to give advice, sometimes just to listen and empathize. But as we're doing that, we also have to look after ourselves. So we're one person within that situation, so we have to know how much we can take. Sometimes we have to be honest, as I've received enough of other people's suffering and what they're telling me today or now, and look after myself. And you have to keep that in mind as you are helping others by listening to their problems or whatever it is that leads to you to this question. You have to look after yourself in that situation, and afterwards, like you say, you go away and you're still remembering what they've said and you feel certain emotions. Maybe you feel sad because you've heard their suffering. Maybe you have thoughts, how can I help them more? What can we do to help this person? But you can't, so you feel helpless. Maybe you get angry, you hear someone saying they have a problem, maybe they're being bullied or something, and you get, oh, I'm angry with that bully, the terrible bully. So then you have to deal with your anger, maybe over something you haven't even witnessed or seen, it's just something you've been told about. On and on it goes. So you have to look after yourself, practice the mindfulness, know how to receive these, what we call aramanas, objects, things you see, hear, and then to try to process it with mindfulness, wisdom, metta, karuna, kindness, compassion, so that you're also looking after yourself, so that you can go away and keep your peace, keep your mind free from suffering. That's your goal. But at the same time, maybe offering help to others. So you have to balance how much you take on in terms of listening and helping, and then preserving your own peace and happiness. Find the balance, find the right amount, and as you're doing that, you're reflecting, well, someone tells you their story of their suffering. In the end, that's their suffering. Quite often you don't actually feel anything at all, do you? You hear someone else's painful story or problem. It is just a story, it's just words and a description, but it may sometimes bring up emotions for you, and so you have to reflect, it's just being stimulated by what I'm hearing. These emotions, basic human emotions, but they arise, they pass away. ultimately they're not self, they're triggered by certain things you're hearing, certain situations. And the more mindful you can be, the less you, we say, indulge or hold on to those emotions, because that's not going to help you and it doesn't help them either. If someone else is suffering and then you start suffering as well, which is often quite common, isn't it? It's kind of passed from one person to another. You really have to see clearly this is not helping them and it's not helping you. So I have to get a grip on myself, establish my mindfulness, accept what's happening, but then let go as quickly as possible. Put the emotion down, don't hold on to it, don't extend its life, don't keep it there any more than you need to, because it will make it harder and harder for you to function and for them to function and for you to help them. Emotions such as anger, sadness, fear, worry, anxiety, it's not going to help anyone. So you get that understanding and then try to maintain enough mindfulness so that what you're hearing, you understand what you're hearing, the words of this person who's suffering, or you're involved with someone who's suffering in some way, but you're not taking it like on as a burden and carrying it around in your mind. You're learning to let go by establishing mindfulness, reflecting on impermanence. You're letting go. That's your aim. If you can keep your mind more free, even though you're involved with other people and their suffering, their problems, then you've got more energy, more space left to look after yourself and even to give back to them. But if you're taking on their suffering and just attaching to it, holding on to it, it's going to bear down on you, weigh you down over time. So you have to also maintain your own ability to be mindful and let go as you're listening, as you're helping other people. And sometimes you need rest, you need separation as well. So you go off and do some meditation or something that brings you mindfulness and calm, away from the action, away from the suffering, and then you're more ready to come back, maybe help them again. You have to know your limits in this. So even the Buddha would take time off. It's not like he's just helping people all the time. He helped the people most of the time. Monks, lay people, even the devas, he was helping, teaching, listening to their questions, giving answers, giving words of advice, solving problems. He did much teaching. But he also took time off to retreat. So the Buddha would retreat by going into jhana. They call that the vihara, dwelling place of the mind of an enlightened one. So even enlightened ones will take time off to have their peace of their meditation, recharge, re-energize, and they can go back and deal with other people's suffering. And when it was extreme, when the monks were arguing so much at Kosambi, he went off for 3 months. Enough of this. The Buddha went off on a nice peaceful retreat in the forest for 3 months. So sometimes we need to take time out and rest from other people's problems, and then you can go back and deal with them. So I'll leave you with those answers tonight.